What's going on? What's going on? Chef Joseph, the entrepreneur, back at you again with another video. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Today is Thursday, August the 13th. And yeah, everything's moving. The clock is ticking. You know, yeah, the clock is ticking. So when the clock is ticking like this, or, when the clock is ticking, period, you need to make sure that you're about your business. You know what I'm saying? Especially in the times we're in now. People are losing jobs, etc. Y'all see what's happening, or some of you may not choose to see it. But um, I would hate to see you wake up one day and realize that the jobs and things that you put your eggs into, you know, and you put your trust in, they end up failing you. So it's no knock to any jobs whatsoever. It's no knock to any jobs because you have to do what you have to do to get to where you need to be, respectfully. Um, Today I want to talk to you about the subject title that sometimes that you have to walk away. Sometimes you have to just walk away. You know, when you're building something, you know, one, you have to eliminate all distractions. And I know that's almost virtually impossible to do in today's society because, of course, we are bombarded by so much out here. You know, we're bombarded by so much. And you look left, there's catastrophe. You look right, there's catastrophe. You look straight ahead, there's catastrophe. It's catastrophe everywhere. Um, if you look around, you see there's a lot of non NPCs that are here that are just kind of drifting, respectfully. Um, Everybody's been given the same measure and amount of time in one day to make something happen. And some people choose to use their time to better themselves. Some people choose to use their talents to just to drift, and that is totally their choice. I'm not making any knocks to anyone about any of that. You know what I'm saying? It's just that people choose to do what they choose to do with their time. But the problem that I have with that is that when you see those who have used their time effectively to start a business, to better themselves, self-improvement, etc., then the ones who haven't leveled up, they have a tendency to, some of them will have the tendency to knock you for, or come against you for leveling up with your life. Go figure. Sometimes in life, what I found is that when you're building something, is that you may have to walk away. You will have to walk away from loved ones. Not saying that it should be that way, not that you wanted it that way, but sometimes you have to walk away to preserve your own mental sanity. You know, a person can only take but so much, you know, and after that, sometimes people just check out, and I totally understand. When I was in a particular business myself, the food business, that is. I'm a food entrepreneur, or I'm an entrepreneur in the food industry. You could say it that way. Um, I got I know at least 75 to 80 questions, the same question from, unfortunately, it was people that look like me, period. You know, are you sure your fish is real? Are you sure that your fish is real? That's just like, how many of y'all driving a car out there? Like the channel, subscribe to the channel. How many of y'all got a car sitting outside, or a bicycle, for a matter of fact? Hell, let's break it on down to the city bus. You know what I'm saying? You know that you drive a Nissan. You pull up at the car wash, and are you sure that's a Nissan? Your key says Nissan. Your car key says Nissan. The emblems say Nissan, both front and back. But you get questioned, are you sure that's a Nissan? I mean, real talk. Oh, I was so over it. So I'm just using that for an example. When I went through that, a lot. Like, seriously. I was like, this can't be real. But you'll go right to McDonald's and purchase a fish sandwich, or Captain D's and purchase a fish sandwich, and you don't have a second thought to ask them, is it real at all? See what I'm saying? But I had made a decision to walk away, you know. Anyway, so I'm saying that to say that sometimes in life you do have to walk away from things that are mentally unhealthy for you. You know, you have to walk away from friends who don't support your vision, who are only one-sided when it comes down to your friendship, just one-sided, selfish. You know, you're there for them, but they're not there for you, type of stuff. You know, and I know sometimes it's tough to make those type of decisions, but in order to preserve what the Most High is giving you to do, what the Most High is giving you to build, sometimes you have to walk away. You know, and what I found is that when you do make that choice to walk away so that you can build, not everybody's going to like that. Some people are going to take it personal. Some people are going to feel a certain type of way, but that's their problem. That's their problem. That's their problem to feel a certain type of way. You know, that's not your problem. You know, and we only get one life here. You know what I'm saying? And so I know personally I refuse to let anyone's negative opinions or narratives about me, you know, affect, you know, anything that I've set out to do. You know, and same as you, same thing for you. If you're setting out to build something as an entrepreneur, you know, there's one thing that to have constructive criticism. You know, people may give you ideas and kind of, you know, give you slight criticism on, or just give you input on things that they think could work, you know, or should not work or whatever. It's nothing wrong with constructive criticism, because that's how you grow. That's how we grow as people, is because, you know, of constructive criticism. And I definitely believe that you should leave yourself open to receiving constructive criticism, as long as it's constructive, not destructive, but constructive. Um, if they made, you know, everyone, you know, if they made everything in the world the same, like the same right side, right side, right side, like everybody's on the right side, then everyone's going to see from a right side narrative. What about the left side? What about the center? You know, what about the 360 degree angles? What about the 180 degree angles? So it's not just, you know, right sided here. You know, it's just an example. So, but at the end of the day, if the constructive criticism is there to help you build, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking that advice to, you know, to build, you know, to help you grow your business. You know, that's definitely, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But then, of course, you got the naysayers out there that will literally come to try to knock what you build. You know what I'm saying? To have something to say about what you build. I remember one time just looking at just the things that we endured in the restaurant business, where people would just make up straight lies. You know what I'm saying? And then put up negative reviews based on lies. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, it was very disheartening to see, because you didn't get your way, because you didn't get 10 packs of ketchup. You know, I'm just using that for an example. Then that's automatically negative. You know what I'm saying? And put up a negative review. That's just one example. And it was like, because you didn't get 10 packs of ketchup. Come on, man. I've seen it all in this business. But I'm just using that as an example. So sometimes you have to walk away, you know, in order to preserve your mental health. To those of you all who are building out here, that you are building something, you know, if you have anything negative, any people that are negative, any places that are negative, any things that are negative, you know, you have to walk away from these things if you want to preserve your future. You know, but I just want to step in and come in for a minute just to talk to y'all about that, is that sometimes as an entrepreneur, when you're building something, sometimes you have to walk away from things that could be a setback to you, and go forward. And then what you'll find is when you go on to build what you set out to build, then there'll be those same people talking about, I knew you could do it. I just knew you could. Yeah, after the fact. You see what I'm saying? But yeah, keep your head on the swivel as an entrepreneur. Do not be afraid to build. We'll talk about that in the next video, maybe talking about overcoming fear. That might be the next topic, overcoming fear. But that'll be another video because some of you all are stuck in fear and why you won't build, and make up every excuse to why you can't build, But anyway, that's another conversation. But sometimes you have to walk away. My advice to you entrepreneurs out here today is that you see the climate that's happening. You see the job loss. You see, like, I haven't kept up with a lot of the stats, or the statistics of what's going on in the job market, because I'm definitely busy doing other stuff. But I can tell you that it's not a big secret that a lot of people are losing jobs, a lot. You know what I'm saying? So, and another thought that I had too is that you take people who, and let's just use this. This is a real situation because I thought about this a couple of months ago, and it was like, take people who work, to get certain type of jobs that pay them, 6 figures or whatever, and they buy a house, BMW outside, they got cars outside, they got dogs outside, they live a good life, a 6-figure life is what I'm trying to say, and their money is tied into, they making their money is tied into paying those house payments, paying those car payments. I mean, some of those car payments, $500, $600, $700, $800 a month, and then they lose their jobs. Can you imagine, like, when you used to making, let's just say, $100,000 a year, and then you lose that job, and you have a house payment, you got 2 car payments, your children need this, they need that. You got to put food on the table, not to mention your light bills, taxes, insurance, and then you go from 100 to next to zero minus plus savings or whatever you were able to save. That's a pretty tight situation, man. That's a pretty tight situation. That's a very tight situation. So what do? And this is why I talk to y'all about entrepreneurship, is at least, while you're building something or working a job, always have something set aside for yourself. Have something set aside for yourself, because you never know when these things will happen, but hopefully you can find and tap into that sooner rather than later, because you don't want that situation to happen to you. I even made a decision, on some things myself, and been in much prayer about it as far as the entrepreneur sector is what I'm speaking about, because I look at certain things and, why I was put here, things like that, and what is my responsibility to the planet, etc. So it's not all about me, but it's also about other things that I see very valuable, that people need to hear and people need to know. So anyway, like and subscribe to the channel, Chef Joseph the Entrepreneur. If you read the description, you'll see what my channel is about. Definitely a lot of work going in, a lot of writing going in. I never thought that my life was spent into authorship and just different things I'm working on with that. But like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you later. All right, peace.